Shaun focused on the pictures fixed to his scuffed white wall. 10 photographs, almost identical. Blonde hair, voluptuous bosoms and green eyes beckoned. He would see her again, he told himself, and this time she wouldn't be pointing a gun at him. Licking his lips, he switched off the light and climbed alone into his bunk. Early though it was, he needed to sleep, to shake off the flu that was rocketing around the prison. A man in his position had to stay on top of his game. At least Bazza had been shipped out earlier. The bottom bunk was empty, and Bazza's snores would no longer disturb him. Dreams came quickly, returning him to a familiar world. Roulette wheels, sharp suits, flashes of £50 notes and flimsy dresses. The blonde blowing a perfect curl of cigarette smoke at him. The grinding of a key in the lock and the clang of an opening door were simply part of his nighttime fantasy at first. Heavies were throwing an irate punter out of the building. Shaun turned back to the blonde. Then, as his cell flooded with light and a screw's voice said, "Meet your new pad mate," he snapped awake. Despite the fever, it took seconds to recognise the man who strode into the tiny cell. He'd featured on TV news a lot recently, albeit clad in Savile Row's finest, rather than the faded maroon tracksuit he was wearing now. The bald head and reddened fleshy face were unmistakable. With an expletive and a groan, Shaun swung himself out of bed. "A Tory MP?" he said contemptuously. "Do me a favour?" The screw, one of the older sort who thought he was a hard man, laughed in Shaun's face. "This isn't the Ritz, Halloran. You want a nice ensuite room to yourself, you shouldn't go around killing people." Evidently spotting the horrified expression on the MP's face, he added, "And you'd better not expect a hotel either, Jenna. You're in prison now. Get used to it." The door slammed shut. Shaun's fellow prisoner composed his features into a rictus grin and held out his hand. "Marshal Jenna," he said. Shaun took it reluctantly, delivering a bone-crushing grip. To his surprise, Jenna didn't flinch. Gradually, Shaun relaxed his hold. "A Tory MP?" he repeated. Jenna grimaced. "No longer. I resigned without compensation." His well-modulated voice was higher than Shaun remembered from the TV and tinged with resentment. Another difference was Jenna's build, taller and bulkier than the cameras had suggested. Unlike Shaun, he'd made it over the 6-foot mark. He might even hold his own in a fight. Chances were, he'd be considered an easy mark by the other cons. A grim institution in an unlovely corner of southeast London, Belmarsh accommodated some of London's toughest villains, as well as Category A prisoners from the rest of England. "Shaun Halloran's my name," Shaun said. "On the outside, here, you can call me Al, like the song." Jenna's eyes twinkled at the mention of the 80s hit, causing Shaun to add aggressively, "No need to sing it." It was clear that Jenna had no idea who Shaun was, which wasn't remarkable. Ordinary criminal activity was far less newsworthy than an MP fiddling his expenses for sessions with rent boys. "Are you really in here for murder? Al?" Jenna ventured. Shaun sucked his teeth. "You don't ask a man that kind of question when you hardly know him," he snarled. The MP had better learn about prison etiquette. "Actually, they put me away for driving offences." "Oh dear," Jenna said, relief spreading across his face. Shaun face-palmed. "What do you think?" he retorted. "Yes, I'm in for murder. The scum deserved it. I'd do it again if I had the chance, and more painfully this time." Let Jenna stew on that. Perhaps the man would leave him alone now and let him sleep. The former MP blinked. "I guessed it would be an activity of that nature," he replied. Although his high voice was strained, he still had a plum in his mouth. "You wouldn't end up in a Category A prison unless you'd done something serious. Then again, I didn't presume for a minute that I'd be coming to Belmarsh myself. I suppose I've been sent here pour encourager les autres." "Indeed," Shaun said, unwilling to acknowledge he hadn't the vaguest notion what his cellmate meant. Languages had held no interest for him at school. Even now, or on the occasions he did business with foreigners, it was conducted in English. He coughed, a deep, throaty hack, which had the satisfying effect of causing Jenna to edge away from him. "You talk too much." His temper was rising with his temperature, his head pounding in response to the televisions blaring through adjacent walls. The cell was a discordant battleground for different channels. Usually, he would have drowned the cacophony by switching on the old TV in the corner, but not today. Jenna wasn't going to either, if he had his way. "Make your bed, get that light off," he ordered the politician. Jenna didn't argue. He spread his prison-issue greying sheets and rough orange blanket across the thin mattress of the lower bunk. Shaun heard thuds and creaks. "Keep the noise down," he said. "I'm getting changed into pyjamas," his padmate protested. "Do it quietly, and no flushing the bog in the night." He expected complaints. Their toilet was inches from the foot of Jenna's bunk, although behind a plywood modesty screen. Jenna didn't react, though. "Good night," he said, switching off the light. There wasn't another peep from him. Shaun slipped back into oblivion, lost to the world until his cell door was opened at 9 the next morning. He'd been dreaming again, about his wife this time. Woken by the noise, he felt an immediate sense of loss, followed by disgust at seeing Jenna. Already dressed in his prison jogging suit, Jenna's chin bore the bloody signs of a recent shave with a dodgy prison razor. The disgraced politician, seated on a plastic chair, raised a plastic mug to him. Jenna's hands were trembling, and he was bleary-eyed, but he tried to sound jaunty. "Good morning, Al. Can I make you a cuppa? Or, anyway, what passes for tea in Belmarsh?" Shaun allowed himself to enjoy the moment before replying. A man who had been in line for a cabinet post, socialised with the Queen at garden parties, was offering him a hot beverage in bed in a Belmarsh cell. "Later," he said. "There's just 30 minutes for exercise before you're banged up again." He stretched, pain flooding his head and body. It wasn't like him to sleep so late. Even so, he would have liked to have stayed in bed for longer. He added, "Haven't you got any better clothes? Only losers wear prison gear." Jenna gawped. "Yes, but it's not exactly private in here, is it? I'd have to get changed in front of you." "Suit yourself," Shaun said. With people to see in the exercise yard, he forced himself to move. He dragged a navy fleece and chinos over his pyjamas, shoved his feet into shoes, and retrieved the makings of a roll-up from his cupboard. "Coming?" "I could do with a shower," Jenna said, yawning. "Later," Shaun repeated. "By the way, the showers aren't private either. Here's a tip. Don't bend down for the soap." He noted Jenna's jaw drop and relented. "Just joking," he said. "I'm not a gay basher, and nor is anyone else. It's the 21st century, but cross me and you're dead." Jenna nodded, his mouth twitching. He seemed shell-shocked as he followed Shaun onto the landing outside the cell. "Don't go jumping," Shaun said. "Screws would make me clean it up." They were on the second floor, right at the top of the house block. Their narrow landing overlooked a void with a dizzying drop to the ground. A 4-foot-high wire fence was no discouragement to a determined diver, and the wire safety net at first floor level offered scant protection. Still, the mesh was painted red, so bloodstains wouldn't show. Another con nudged Shaun on his way past. "Going up in the world, Al?" "Shut it, Jonesy," Shaun said, turning to Jenna to remind him. "We haven't got all day." Jenna said nothing, staring at the stream of prisoners filing across the landing and clattering down the metal staircase to the yard. "Keep your head down. Follow me," Shaun said, rolling a cigarette and joining the end of the line. It moved at the speed of a lazy snail as each inmate was frisked before going outside. "If anyone asks you for protection money, say you're paying it to me." He had no intention of shaking down the MP, but he enjoyed the flicker of alarm in Jenna's eyes. "I'm broke, Al," Jenna protested. "As if," Shaun shook his head. MPs' salaries were legalised robbery. Everyone knew that. Anyway, Jenna had access to riches. "Your wife's minted, and she loves you dearly, doesn't she? She said so on the telly." The MP's circumstances had been discussed in court and widely reported. Jenna, cash-strapped after a business failure, had made a good marriage. Jeannie was an heiress who kept him in style in a Hampstead mansion. She was clearly besotted, announcing tearfully that she forgave Marshall's misdemeanours. Her love was unconditional, she'd said. She had a wonderful husband who just happened to be gay, and she accepted that. "Did you take a good look at my wife on TV?" Jenna complained. "She resembles a Rottweiler with lipstick. Her fellow can only take so much." "You're getting 6 months away with good behaviour," Shaun observed. True, Jenna's wife was no oil painting, but the MP could lie back and think of his bank balance, surely. Shaun couldn't understand what might drive a man into the arms of a male prostitute. His own masculinity had never been in question, though, and for this reason his reputation wouldn't suffer by associating with Jenna. He glared ferociously at anyone who looked in their direction, however. Waiting until they were in the yard and he could guide the MP to a corner, he said, "If you want to take care of your wife, I can put you in touch with people." Jenna sprang back, stumbling. His face revealed disbelief. "A contract killing?" he asked, in a whisper so loud that Shaun wanted to thump him.